What's up, everybody? It is Anna Ten Bensel from Developer. I am a certified blockchain developer and a certified cryptocurrency auditor, and I'm here today to talk about the very beginning basics of HTML. So if you're familiar with my other videos, I did a Java beginner tutorial, kind of 1 and 2. I wanted to start by doing HTML and CSS, so I'm going to start with HTML. And then we can go into like a JavaScript project that incorporates all three of those elements, CSS, HTML, and Java. So I just kind of want to give you guys like a little bit of a brief history on like what HTML is. Because I think not everyone knows, which I feel like, if you grew up in the Tumblr or MySpace era, you probably remember editing your profile, like your little HTML profile, to like have music or have something else. So what is HTML? HTML is basically just a language that most websites are written in. It's used to create pages and make them functional. The code is used to make them visually appealing. The code that makes them visually appealing, like the client-facing side or the user-facing side, is known as CSS. So we can get into that later, but HTML was first created by Tim Berners-Lee and I think Robert Calico. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, and a few others in 1989. And HTML just stands for, I'm going to actually write this down because I think this is good to know. It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext means that the document contains links that allow the reader to jump to other places in the document or to another document altogether. And the latest version that I think is out right now is HTML5. And a markup language is a way that computers speak to one another and control how the text is processed and presented. To do this, HTML uses two things: tags and attributes. And I think that's important to note. So tags and attributes are essentially the basics of HTML. Let me write that down. And they basically work together to perform a couple different functions. So an example would be tags are used to mark up the start of an HTML document, and they're usually enclosed with angle brackets. An example of that would be something like this, an H1, which would be for a header, like the big header. All tags must be opened here and closed in order to function. And when you open tags within tags, you have to close them in which the order they were open. So if I were going to do header and then bold, I would do header, bold, type hello, and close it with a bold and then the header. So that's kind of the gist of tags. So you're probably wondering what attributes are. Attributes basically contain additional pieces of information. Attributes also take the form of an opening tag and where additional info can be placed inside. So an example of an attribute would be something like an image, and you'd pick the image. So let's say my cat.jpg, because I love my cat. And we could write the alt text, which is, I guess it would just be a photo of my cat, period. And then we close that up. Boom, easy. In this instance, the image and source src and the alt text alt are attributes of the image tag. So the image is the tag, and inside are the attributes. So just some kind of golden rules to remember: the vast majority of tags that are open, like I said, need to be closed with the element. And when using multiple tags, it has to be closed in the order in which they're opened. So we kind of briefly touched about that here. It is important to remember the order. So if you ever get lost in the middle of everything, always go back to the beginning and then use that to close it. So now that we've kind of got the basic theory out of the way, let's learn about kind of the different things we can do. I'm using Visual Studio Code today, but you guys can use things like Sublime Text 3. It's free. It's cross-platform. It supports on Windows, Macs, and Linux. You can also use, I think it was code1.io. I actually am going to be using that for the JavaScript, CSS, and HTML projects that we will be kind of walking through together. And that is actually a browser online. Let me see if I think I have it pulled up. Yeah. Here, let me make it smaller for you. And this is a wonderful tool, especially if any of you are in a place where you can't download software, or if you're out of school. This codepen.io is amazing. You have all these things here, and then this shows you like your local host, or like the thing that comes on, if you're going to run your code. We're going to be using this, like I said, in another set of projects, but you are more than welcome to use it now. We're just going to be using this part, so you can actually hide these if you'd like, but just a nice free resource, and one that you don't have to like download or have admin access to. But for this, I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. I know I keep saying Virtual Studio Code. I don't mean to. I don't know why I got into such a bad habit, but here we are. One recommendation I have is to not use Microsoft Word. You can use like even Notepad or stickies if you need to like write stuff down. But don't use Microsoft Word or really any other word processor for writing HTML code, because it's just awful. So let's start with basic constructions of an HTML page. So the tags should be placed underneath each other at the top of every HTML page. So like, let's start here. So let's do a bracket, exclamation point, doc type, HTML, and close that. This tag specifies the language you will write the page. So in this case, the language is HTML5. All right. And then we'll go here. This tag signals that from here, we're going to write an HTML code, and it'll close itself up. This comes in handy, obviously, when you're writing in a lot of different languages, lets the computer know what you're writing in. And then let's do head. So head is where all the metadata for the pages goes. This stuff is mostly meant for search engines and other computer programs. So it's not going to be entirely client-facing or user-facing. And then we have, last but not least, body. This is where the content of the page goes. So when, like an example, if we were going to lay this out, I would write for let's say I'm doing a web page, I would do HTML. And then inside of that, I would do head. And that lets you know that I'm starting this header, if you will. And I would write title. And I would say, let's say, intro to HTML. And then it closes the title. So I would go down here, and this would give us, so this would be the full page. And right now we have a header and the title that says intro to HTML. Then we would go to the body, like we talked about before. And we could do header 1. This is your header. And then let's say we wanted a paragraph underneath. We would write that as a P. And say this is your paragraph. Simple. And then you basically just let it close itself out that way. And that's how your basic average HTML page is going to be structured. You can also use, I'm going to write this up here also. You can use meta. And this is where the information about the document is going to be stored. So like character coding, name, page context, description, etc. So let's move on. There are 6 different types of headings, and they're written out between H1 through H6. Those would be all the different types of headers. you probably guessed 1 and 2 should be for the most important titles, while the remaining tags are kind of used for like subheadings and like less important text. So like we did up here, we used H1 for the biggest title, the biggest thing. So let's talk now about other kind of key elements. B is going to be bold. So that would be like to highlight important information. There's also strong, and strong literally just means strong, similar to bold, but it highlights key text. And then we have I, which is going to be for italics. And then we would do something like EM, which would be an emphasis text. This usually is used as image captions. Let's do mark. This is marked text. This highlights the background of the text. And let's do next. Small text is if you want to shrink the text. And then, strike. This will put a horizontal line across the text or give it like a strike out. Give it a strike out look. If you want the line underneath, like for an underline, you would just do U, and that just, underlines the text, or you can also use it for links. And then ins would be for inserted text. This is displayed with an underline to show an inserted text. And last but not least, we have sub, which is subscript or subscript text, which is, kind of a typographically stylistic choice. And again, these tags have to be, if they are open, they have to be closed. So you can't just like say strike and then assume it's going to strike the whole thing, because it has to be closed in order for it to work. If you want to add a link, I actually completely forgot one. I'm so sorry. A would be for anchor, or an opening tag that's written in a specific format. So that would be an anchor tag. And you can use an anchor tag to like create, points in the page that will open once they're clicked, yeah. And I don't want to bore y'all too much. Let me see. I have a list of talking points that I wanted to go over, and I'm kind of going over them pretty fast. Oh, here we are. We can talk now about an ordered list. And you guys, I know have all seen an ordered list. There's an ordered list and an unordered list. And an ordered list is OL, and that'll go, number things like an item 1, 2, 3. So an example of that written out, we would write it OL, and then we say LI for the list, first item in the list. And let's say apples. Then we go to the next one, and you don't have to number them. They will automatically number themselves. Bananas. And then peaches. LI. Peaches. And then it'll close itself up, and this will look visually like one apples. That's what it will look like. So this would be an ordered list. An unordered list would just be, it's a secondary kind of list, also better probably known as a bullet point list. And that's written as UL, so unordered list. And you would write it the same way, the same kind of bullets. So we would say here, apples. I'm just going to copy this because that's easier. There we go. And then that will look like your average bullet point list. You can also do a definition list, but I don't really use those as much. But you would write that as definition list and close that up. And you would write it the same way with the LI in there. Oh no, actually, I'm sorry. I completely misspoke. You would write it with a DT. So then you would have the item, then the description. I'm sorry, I misspoke. My goodness. And then the definition. Oops. Definition with all the I's apparently. There you go. So those would be the three kind of lists you probably will see most commonly in your HTML work. Now let's kind of go for tags again, so you can recognize them and use them as your kind of skills develop. So we could use something like T-head for, this would be like for something like data in a table. So this would be like the table head or the top of the table. And if you're like me, you like to say this in your head as fed. Small jokes. And you're going to see here, we're kind of going to do the same thing. So up here, we talked about the head. We talked about the body. You're going to see that again here. So this is going to be the table body, T-body, table body, content of the table. And then one you haven't seen yet is T-foot. So T-foot would be the table's foot or the bottom of the table. You could also make a column group, and that would be COLGROUP. Perfect. Okay. This would be the column group, or like just what's within the table. And then last but not least, TH, which is for table header, and that is the data cell for the table header. Tables, borders, spacing are usually styled by CSS, but we'll cover this obviously later. So like a simple table, if we were to write one out, would be table, and then we would say TR, and then we would say TD, row 1, column 1. And then we could go down here again and say TD, row 1, column 2. And we would let that close itself here, and we would write TR, and then we would write again TD, row 2, column 1, and then duplicate that one more time. So then we have 2 rows and 2 columns. So TD, row 2, column 2. There you go. And you can hit save. It's pretty simple, pretty good. And basically that'll just give you a nice square with 2 columns, 2 rows. So let's talk about a little bit about HTML tables a little bit more. Creating your table for your exact needs. Tables used to kind of be like the way primary page, like we used to lay things out, but with the adaptation of CSS, it's really not necessary anymore. So, and also like for good reason, because like it was like almost impossible to maintain. But yeah, we could also go over anything else, but I would love to jump into, now that you have these kind of basic things out of the way, I would love to jump into the CSS tutorial so we can get started on your first JavaScript project. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, concerns, you find any errors, let me know. Let me know if you guys want to see something in particular. I also need to stop saying you guys. I don't mean to do that. I'm from the north originally, and that's what everyone says. I need to start saying y'all. But I want to thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video, which should be CSS, the Beginner's Guide.